Substantiated shade throwing continues by Elizabeth Warren towards one Bernard Sanders. This, what I'm referencing, took place at I believe, a town hall last night that was hosted by CNN. I'm assuming it was probably in South Carolina, given that the South Carolina primary is coming up. What is it, like 2 more days? Yeah, because tomorrow's Friday. And so a voter there, a self-identified Bernie supporter, was asking Elizabeth Warren, you were one of the candidates or every candidate on stage, including you, except Bernie Sanders, was okay with the super delegates overturning the will of the voters if the candidate with the most votes only got a plurality and not a majority. And this voter asking this question was just very put off by this and called it a bunch of Baba Booey or something. He probably wanted to call it, BS or bullshit or something, but on CNN, obviously, so he couldn't. So that they asked this question, Elizabeth Warren. So why do you support super delegates potentially overturning the will of the people? And now she's trying to throw shade at Bernie Sanders, saying that's what Bernie wanted to do in the 2016 election, which is just totally disingenuous. If she was really concerned with portraying an accurate representation, what she would have said, and because this is what Bernie said at one point, is that the superdelegates in the states that he won, he thought that they should vote for him and support him, which makes sense. He won 22 states. The superdelegates should, reflect the will of the people and support him in those states where he won those 22 states. The superdelegates should support him. So that was his position. He wasn't saying that the superdelegates should support him in states where Hillary Clinton won, and obviously that's what Warren was trying to imply, that Bernie Sanders in 2016 was in favor of the superdelegates overturning the will of the people. No, he just thought the superdelegates should support him in the states that he won. So Elizabeth Warren was just flat out wrong, and either just totally ignorant or just flat out lying, and she just doesn't care at this point. And again, this is a very funny line of argument and reasoning coming from Elizabeth Warren, given that there's a good chance that she might not win any states. The state that she has the best chance of winning is New Hampshire, or not New Hampshire, she lost New Hampshire, but Massachusetts, her home state. But it's like Bernie Sanders, I believe, has like a 50% chance of winning there. It's going to be very close, but Bernie Sanders has been devoting more support to that state to just kind of beat her there and just really clean up on Super Tuesday. So it's like, no, Elizabeth Warren, that's totally not the argument that Bernie Sanders was making, and it's just very disingenuous of you to say that's what he wanted in 2016, as well as the fact that he didn't go to a brokered convention or didn't want a brokered convention in 2016. He held out his endorsement a little bit for Hillary Clinton in order to get some concessions from Clinton and her campaign, but again, he ended up vociferously endorsing her and doing it was like 36 or so rallies and events to try to get her elected. So and and then she talked about how Bernie had a big hand in writing the current rules of the DNC with regards to the superdelegates, and again, that's just a total misrepresentation of what actually happened. The people that were on kind of Bernie's side of the argument on the DNC Unity Commission in 2016, Bernie's people wanted to get rid of superdelegates completely. The DNC party hacks, the neoliberal elites of the party voted against that, so that's why it was a compromise, because Bernie Sanders people didn't have enough people to vote out superdelegates completely. So excuse me, the compromise was that they went around, the superdelegates didn't appear to till the second round of votes if at the first round the person didn't have a majority. So she was just off there again, and she didn't answer the question basically, and was just basically saying Bernie had a big hand in writing the rules. I didn't. I'm just following them. It's very similar to that climate justice forum that was hosted by Democracy Now! I think it was in South Carolina potentially a couple months ago, and Amy Goodman was asking Elizabeth Warren, how do you feel about these first two states being just overwhelmingly full of white people? And Elizabeth Warren is like, do you want me to criticize Iowa and New Hampshire? I'm not going to do that. I'm just a player in the game. It's like, no. Better response would have been, I do really appreciate how seriously the voters in both of these early states take the process, but they're definitely not representative of the multicultural nature of U.S. society at large. So it might make more sense to investigate having a different order of these first states to make sure we're getting a wider view of people voting in these caucuses and primaries. That would have been a much better way to do it. And so, but instead she said, no, I'm just a player in the game. So it's really just very sad and disheartening to see the really centrist and right-leaning trajectory that Elizabeth Warren has demonstrated in the last couple of months. So let's go back a couple months, and once she started taking in the polls, that was right after she totally flip-flopped and backpedaled on her support of Medicare for All, came out with this convoluted two-step solution to try to get it and try to pass it in their third year after all the political capital has already been, given up, stabbing Bernie Sanders in the back, accusing him of being a sexist and misogynist. Now, and then again, she's flip-flopped on taking super PAC money. Now she's okay with doing that. And I think a big reason why is that her fundraising numbers were so abysmal. She didn't change her position on that, then she wouldn't have any money to be in the race at this point, and she doesn't have the huge grassroots record level support that Bernie Sanders has. He doesn't have to pander to super PACs or take their money because he's funded by millions and millions of small dollar donations. And then now we have this. She's doubling down on her support for the super delegates, overturning the will of the people and saying that Bernie Sanders wanted the same thing in 2016. And as again, I just explained, Bernie Sanders was floating the idea that the super delegates should support him in the states that Bernie Sanders won, the 22 states. Elizabeth Warren hasn't won any states. She'll be lucky if she wins Massachusetts. So, okay, yeah, the super delegates from Massachusetts, okay, support Elizabeth Warren, sure. But what about all the other states where you've come in third, fourth, or fifth and have no support? Why should voters trust you if you're willing for the DNC super delegate party hacks to overturn the will of the people in a totally undemocratic process? So these are the type of things that Elizabeth Warren is okay with. The super delegates overturning the will of the people, super disgusting. She now totally supports taking super PAC money because she doesn't have any fundraising at this point to really speak of. In order to stay in the game, she had to corrupt herself and then flip-flopping on Medicare for All. And again, if we want to get a progressive elected to the White House, which I really do, it's super important because we really need things like Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, canceling student loan debt, etc., etc. Bernie Sanders is the only chance that we have. So I really encourage you, really deeply implore you, if you are an Elizabeth Warren supporter at this point, really question why you would be supporting her over Bernie Sanders. She literally has no chance of winning on her own. That's why she's floating the idea of super delegates overturning the will of the people. That's literally the only way she could win. And even that point, she wouldn't have enough delegates. So it's like just totally disappointing and disheartening. Those are my thoughts. Share yours down there in the comment section. Peace. Much love.